All righty, you guys. Whoops. Okay, can you guys see me and hear me pretty good? Sorry, I got just switched screens and I was making sure. Well, I want to start off today by wishing everybody a happy Boxing Day. So I'm going to have to confess, I didn't actually know what Boxing Day was up until a little earlier this week. But with the help of my good friend Google, I was surprised to find that Boxing Day is not actually a reference to what occurs after spending too much time with your visiting relatives. It actually originated as a holiday on which townspeople would give gifts to the poor following Christmas. Quick note, this may be actually the earliest and most altruistic form of what we now know as regifting in the modern world. Unfortunately, as if you haven't had enough of it this past month already, Boxing Day in contemporary culture is now simply seen as another shopping day, a chance to get all the things on your list that were on back order thanks to shipping shortages in Santa's workshop this year. Shopping season aside, for our purposes this morning, Boxing Day is also the second day of the Christmastide. Yes, that's right. Merry Christmas, y'all, and keep the carols cranking, the cookies coming, because the celebration is just getting going. And we have 10 more days of bell jingling to go. Or is it 10 more days of boxing that await us? The slugging, not shopping variety. That would depend on whether we choose to celebrate or debate this season. Let me explain. Those of you who zoomed in for last Sunday's service got to hear about the pagan origins of Christmas, a history that has put a wall between Christians and pagans for centuries. Now, I won't bore you by repeating the history of the holiday, outside reinstating the fact that the solstice season was traditionally celebrated by the Scandinavian people who would burn large logs, which modern Freudians now equate to phallic symbols for fertility, and celebrate by whining and dining around the fire until the wooden Yule fuel burned out, a bonfire that lasted nearly 12 days. Given that this Yule festival centered around the pagan celebration of Baal and Mithras, the god of fertility and the god of the unconquerable sun, it would only seem fitting that Christians would come to claim this celebration as the birth date for Jesus, correct? Fitting because it was the virgin birth of God's only begotten son that Christians were celebrating. Now, contrary to popular belief, many Christians didn't actually like the idea of overlapping the holidays. And it actually wasn't until Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol made it to America that our country finally embraced Christmas as a national holiday in 1870. Well, why did it take so long? Easy. Because instead of allowing themselves to celebrate alongside their pagan neighbors, conservative Christians instead wanted to play Scrooge and box it out with their Baal-worshipping brethren. The response isn't unique to Christianity, nor the Christmas holiday. You see, throughout history, it's been a struggle for many religious groups to share and celebrate with what they would call their heathenistic homies. Instead, we like to fight and argue and bicker over the holidays, much like many still do on their holiday tables. Hence the reason that you wouldn't normally find a Christian minister preaching in a virtual Unitarian Universalist pulpit during Christmastide, talking about how we could and should celebrate Baal, Jesus, Mithras in unison. But given that we don't do normal well in Santa Cruz, that's exactly what we have this morning. So put down your boxing gloves, pick up a turkey leg, and be careful not to burn down your Christmas tree as we stir the Yule fire. Now, I must point out that there was actually another reason for the December 25th day to have been deemed the birth of Christ beyond early Catholic missionaries' effort to overshadow Baal. As tradition has it, Jesus was crucified on March 25th. Thus, given the belief that his death and conception occurred on the same day, and factoring in a 9-month pregnancy term, that would mean that Jesus would have been born some 2021 years ago, yesterday, on the 25th of December. Well, how can that be proven, you might ask? It can't. That's just the point. Faith isn't faith if there's proof, and a celebration is no fun if it turns scientific. So what would it look like if we chose to embrace the miracles and mystique of all the traditions and focus on the festivities of the season instead of on who it is that is getting celebrated? After all, who would want this, the second day of Christmas, to be about division when we could be lifting up the blissful beauty and unity of diversity? Yes, who says I can't celebrate the birth of God's begotten Son, Jesus, alongside of Amy, my lovely worship pagan assistant, who may be paying homage to the unconquerable sun Mithras? Well, we can, and that's the benefit of being a Unitarian. We recognize our commonalities and celebrate, not debate, about the differences that we might have in a way that allows us to embrace all the holidays. And as luck turns out, there's over 10,000 holidays being celebrated around the world every year. For example, today is also National Thank You Note Day, Do Not Disturb Day, the kickoff to Kwanzaa, and National Learn a New Board Game Day. And rest up, because tomorrow is Play in a Puddle Day, and we actually have a lot of puddles to play in this year. So all that aside, maybe that's why we decided to play it safe this time and go secular instead by using the Gospel of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night for our Christmastide reading today. Or did we go secular? You see, it's actually a pretty common belief that Shakespeare was the one to translate the Book of Psalms into English in the King James Bible. And given the wittiness of Old Will, he proceeded to leave his signature right smack in the middle of his work. You see, at the time of translation back in 1611, the playwright was celebrating his 46th birthday. So the 46th word from the start of the 46th psalm is shake, and the 46th word from the end is spear. The Catholic Church didn't likely see that little bit of connivery coming, but they too got tricky in sneaking their way into the Yule festival. Twelfth Night alludes there are 12 days of the Christmastide to celebrate. So the Catholic missionaries actually composed the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, as a religious catechism of which to use when spreading the Catholic beliefs in the pagan lands. Hence, a partridge and a pear tree is actually Christ and the Creator. 2 turtle doves are the Old and New Testaments. 3 pipers piping are the 3 wise men. 4 lords a leaping are the 4 gospels, and so forth on up to the 12 apostles. Yep, if you can't fool them, sing with them, right? For as the fool of the play himself proclaims, better a witty fool than a foolish wit. Now, looking at that play, let us dive once more into today's opening reading and focus on 3 central themes found in Twelfth Night that may be very relevant to our 2 turtle dove day today. Love, gender, and deceit. So let me read that opening passage one more time. If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken, and so die. That strain again it had a dying fall. Oh, it came over my ear like the sweet sound that breathes upon a bank of violets, stealing and giving odor. Enough, no more. 'Tis not so sweet now as it was before. O spirit of love, how quick and fresh art thou, that notwithstanding thy capacity, receiveth as the sea, not enters there, of what validity and pitch so rare, but falls into abatement and low price, even in a minute, so full of shapes is fancy, that it alone is high fantasical. If music be the food of love, play on. The unhappy love-sick Orsino tells his servants and musicians. Then in the speech that follows, Orsino asks for the musicians to give him so much musical love that he will overdose, surfeit, and cease to desire love any longer. Through these words, Shakespeare introduces the image of love as something unwanted, something that comes upon people unexpectedly and that is not easily avoided. You see, eros, or romantic love, evoked fear in Greek antiquity. Hence, the reason that the celebration of a god of fertility would be something extra scary. Not only does it celebrate a pagan god, but it idolizes an emotion that makes us do crazy things, that makes us lose our inhibitions and follow our feelings. Oh, how horrible indeed. But this conservative opening call is later complicated by Arsenio's closing comment. So full of shapes is fancy that it alone is high fantasical, he says, relating the idea of an overpowering love, fancy, to that of imagination, that which is fantastical. Love is what makes mystical the mundane. Through this connection, the play raises the question of whether losing oneself to love has more to do with the reality of the person who is loved or with the lover's own imagination, the act of loving. Is the joy of love, of celebration, dependent on whether we celebrate a pagan or Christian god? No. The spirit of celebration, however, dims without love. Bliss is simply found in the act of celebrating something beyond ourselves. Next, given the focus on fertility found in the pagan Yuletides, it is only fitting that gender be one of the key themes in the play Twelfth Night, which has actually been classified as one of Shakespearean's so-called transvestite comedies, a play in which a female character, in this case Viola, disguises herself as a man. This situation creates a sexual mess. Viola falls in love with Orsino, but cannot tell him because he thinks she is a man. While Olivia, the object of Orsino's affection, falls for Viola in her guise as a male Cicero. This was an important inclusion by Shakespeare because the Feast of Twelfth Night, from which the play takes its name, was known as a time every year during which social hierarchies were turned completely upside down. Yes, once again, could this 12-day holiday, of which we are on only day 2, be our opportunity to disregard labels of gender, social standing, religious affiliation, and the like in hopes of simply sharing in joy? I think so. And finally, the theme of deception. You see, when she first finds herself stranded in Lyria, Viola decides to conceal who she is. After all, a young woman who could be vulnerable to attack or sexual assault is dangerous. So she was much safer disguised as a man. However, Viola quickly learns the cost of maintaining a disguise. Her intentions and actions are constantly misinterpreted, and she cannot correct these mistakes without betraying her secret. This is the risk of the proselytization practices of many faith traditions. You see, to share one's faith in an honest devotion is a beautiful gift, a gift of goodwill and good intentions that serves as a fitting way to celebrate and share the spirit of a God of goodness. However, far too often people try to scare or trick people into adopting their beliefs. And in these instances, the authenticity of their intentions is in jeopardy. Thus, allow us to embrace these next 10 days of festiveness and fun without worrying about who or what it is our neighbor is celebrating, but focus instead on the act of celebration. Let us not worry about pushing or proving our beliefs, but praising others and ourselves for having the courage to believe in something. And actually, maybe after nearly 2 years of isolation, separation, and struggle, we should simply celebrate ourselves and one another. For as Malvolio proclaims, "Thou shalt not be afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." My friends, you or we are great. Do not be afraid to celebrate your unique and our corporate greatness. Because as we move on to a holiday next week, when we look at our shortcomings and what we have to change about ourselves, maybe this year we approach it a little different. Maybe this year we spend the time this week leading up to New Year's looking at what's right with us, loving ourselves, and celebrating ourselves. So happy holidays, everyone, and party on. Have fun. Amen.